Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1. When humanity developed FTL, the specifics of the drive meant that each ship needed to be the size of Manhattan and built like an anti-nuke bunker to survive a trip, not to mention using power to fry a continent. This was shocking to aliens, more used to gentler, subtler means of travel. Written by Bonto Sol. The Talamani people were not alone in the universe. At first, it was just a whisper of radio signals, too regular to ignore, but too brief to really place credence in. Then came another, then a constant stream. Once the scientists realized there was more than a fluke, it took all of 2 seconds to point the hypercom generator at the planet of origin and send a signal. As ecstatic as the Talamani had been to receive even a distant hints of intelligent life off of their own small blue moon, they were even more so to receive a return hypercom signal. At first, it was nothing but unintelligible hash. The signal format's too different to read. There was intelligence behind the signal, but no sure meaning. So they started from the ground up, with a short burst of mathematical sequences. They got the completed set, with another from the other people for them to complete. Within a single day, it was solved and sent, winging across the void with another set of Talamani designs, more complex than the last. For dozens of revolutions, the scientists of 2 worlds labored so that they may one day talk in more simple numbers and notation. They failed. Every attempt to bridge the gap in cognition between the 2 people was spoiled by some twist. Images were too complex, the computer unable to comprehend the radically different architecture of the others. Words were utterly unintelligible. Letters were images, after all. Pictograms couldn't be deciphered, and even if they could, there would be no guarantee of a common frame of reference. The common interactions of the universe, gravity, electromagnetism, radioactivity, could be used, perhaps, as metaphors, but there was no sure way to know if the others had interpreted it properly. But as always, both people had numbers, maths, and the concept of space. Everything needed to mark a place and a time. It took a few revolutions, but eventually the Talamani managed to impress upon the others a desire to send a meeting in a certain place at a certain time, or at least they thought they did. They could not be sure. They would send the ship anyways. If the messages had not been interpreted, they would be fine. There would be no loss, and both peoples would simply resume their attempts to translate each other's messages. If the others did send a representative, though, the reward would be immeasurable. A whole new civilization with new science, new perspective, and maybe, as some dread to hope, other contacts amongst the stars. Real space transition in 3, 2, 1. The bridge windows clear into a bright starscape as the diplomatic cruiser Sylar slides into position with barely a whisper of wasted radiation. Status report, Captain Clarix calls over the whine of deployment radiators as the Sylar began dumping the waste heat it had accumulated over the long slipspace journey. All departments report nominal functioning on the ship. Engineering clears for maneuvering, calls out Necomre, the internal officer. Slipspace eddies indicate that we have arrived 84 ticks ahead of indicated time, the navigation officer said. Hold position. Internal, ensure that diplomatic team is ready for contact. Clarix's wings shuffle and the crest feathers flash in a happy orange as he briefly contemplates being the officer presiding over the first meeting between 2 completely separate intelligent species. Diplomatic team reports full readiness. All members, the science external officer cuts off an internal officer's report. Energy surge bearing 448 by 673. Gamma radiation. Raise shields. Any chance this can be an anomaly? Clarix snaps as he snaps himself out of his fantasies of first contact. His ship was in danger. This was in no place for something like that. Scans indicate no proximity anomalies. Shields raised. Clarix watches as a shimmering film of blue energy slides over the silo, sparking as it shunts aside the gamma energy, glowing brighter as the energy surges even higher. Radiation alarms begin to wail as the energy worms its way through the shields, battering the fragile hull of the silo. Energy increase is plateauing. Shields are keeping radiation below lethal. Contact! The external combat officer this time. Bearing 488 by 673. Large contact. One window snaps to display the ship that had just appeared in what was an incomprehensible maelstrom of energy. Clarix can't prevent a small gasp from escaping his peak. An immense iron construct, vaguely seed-shaped, floats placidly inside a deadly vortex of radiation. Readouts and overlays blink into existence around it, giving it scale. It's the size of a small island, and nearly solid armor. It's a warship. Radiation decreasing, returning to safe levels. The external officer calls out, but Clarix is barely listening. Have we been so naive? Were we so eager to converse with some other soul in the universe that we overlooked something? Did we offend them? Contact is not maneuvering. Radiation is decreasing to baseline. Communication is now possible. We may have just doomed everyone. If this is how they build warships, we have no chance of standing against them. Captain! Captain! The internal officer shakes him out of his reverie. Yes, officer. Diplomatic team is reporting readiness. They are, eager, sir. Did none of them see it? Contact is sending a signal. This is it. The final threats. Only it wasn't. It was nothing more than an enthalpy equation describing the formation of sodium chloride, an incomplete one. Did they want a response? Why the song and dance of sending a warship by not attacking us immediately? Captain, do you want to send a response? What if it's not a warship? They came in a massive flash of radiation. That level of armor could certainly be unnecessary to withstand that. Captain, no. Yes. Clarix contemplates the decision for only a moment. They were not making any hostile moves, and nothing existed to be gained by fleeing. Send the complete signal, contact the diplomatic team, initiate contact. If I'm wrong, their blood will be on my hand. Ambassador Kukala floats in freefall, halfway between the vast iron construct and the other ship and his own comparatively tiny ship, trying to keep his thrilling heart in check. The being before him is strikingly similar to his own. One head, albeit a round one. The helmet of the figure made no allowances for a beak. 2 arms, ending in 5 blunt fingers instead of 4 clawed ones. 2 legs, with similarly structured boots, no wings at all. It's dressed in a white, reflective suit with some sort of sleek pack on its back, which occasionally emits a white burst of gas to keep it centered, much the same as his own EVA pack. Hesitantly, or so it seems, it raises one of its arms, extending all 5 of its fingers. The pack on its back pulses to compensate the sequence to compensate for the motion. Hesitantly, Kukala raises his own, reaching out and not quite touching. Whatever being was in the other suit seemed to come to a decision, reaching out further, but it still seems hesitant as its hand hovers over his. Aquila is actually aware of every single camera of the silo pointing at him, acutely aware of his eyes on the Tilamani people, counting on him not to screw up. They don't stop him as he finally takes the last step, wrapping his own fingers around those of the other person. First contact. For real this time. End of story. Story number 2. Brothers in Arms, written by Bonto Sul. The air tastes like burnt caramel. Nabin takes another breath, feeling the armor tighten around his body. Composites and plastics momentarily smoothing his fur and throwing the bony plates and ridges around his body into sharp relief, as pores in his skin pull the air in from the pocket around his naked body. Then he exhales, and the armor relaxes, pockets expanded, armor closing tight. He can't see the planet turning below, but he knows its story. He hadn't been there when the Hazen had invaded, hadn't been there when the factories burned and its mines collapsed. But he was about to be there now. The human walks by, heavy, hulking, and broad. He can't see past the visor to their face, but he knows it well. Known it since faces just like it had pulled him from the burning rubble of his home. Soft and kind, expressive and gentle. No plates of bone covering them, just soft skin and fine fur. He remembers the rage then, the looks on their faces as they had survived the wrecked city, their low, murmuring words said to each other, contrasted with the gentle voices they brought to him with their food and blankets. Their armor thick, heavy metal hides their figure. He can't hear the machinery that underlies their second skin, but he knows that it's there. It's a stark contrast to his own, a lithe construction of polymer and flexible composite plates. The armored human steps onto the slot in the wall, heavy clamps clunking as they hold him in place. Neighbor feels his own straps around his chest and legs. The rest of his segment is strapped in too. The comms are open, but none of them say a word. Silence before a battle, to allow a soldier to make their own peace with themselves. A tradition that Nabin appreciates, even more than the squad of humans and that dropship respected. The launch countdown is in his face, but he pays it no mind. It would come when it would come. And then it does. The world lurches around him as the dropship comes free. For a time, there's silence. Every now and again, the whir and buzz as laser turrets find its mark, but nothing else. Like the universe was giving them one last chance. He can't see the world outside, just a little bubble of steel and air and flesh. And then it all comes at once. The atmosphere rakes the vehicle, and suddenly the chug-chug-chug of the dropship's heavy autocannon resounds through the cabin as it sweeps the air, pounding anything larger than a bread box with predatory ferocity. Human weapons had that effect, like they were constructions of channeled fury instead of steel and crystal. He just focuses on his task, finds his peace and his purpose. The Hazen were here, burrowed into the depths of his stolen home. He would not stand. Not if he and his brothers in arms could yet breathe. A warning quickly dismissed. A laser was digging at the bottom of the dropship hull, searing into the heat shield. He can imagine it, glowing lurid red, sloughing away as Hazen's death stare pierced it. It would destroy them, or the humans' artillery would reach it first. Two options, neither in his control. The alarm dies, and despite himself, Nabin breathes a sigh. There would be moments now, moments before landfall. The floor slams into his feet as he grunts at the sudden weight. The roaring of the atmosphere streaking past is all of a sudden joined by the rumble of rocket thrusters as the dropship struggles to bleed velocity from their frantic descent. The landing is still rough. He can feel it strike through his armor, feel his bones flex from the impact. But he holds through the pain as the straps come undone and a brief beat of silence reigns. They were here, standing on the sacred soil of their wronged homeland. Already his section was standing, arraying themselves neat and orderly despite the muted roars of battle mere steps away. They'd learned that from the humans too. The human steps forward in a single line, the stomps of steel on steel resounding through the dropship's cabin as they form a barrier with their armored bodies, rifles raged. And then the door blows free. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.